Hey, it's Katie Moran, and here's our Heartfelt Lift. Today I'm here with.
Natasha Carter.
Thank you so much for coming on today. I'd love to hear a little bit about your self-publishing journey and also how do you deal with the hate and still stay empowered?
A couple things. I did start off trying to go the traditional route,
Mhm.
and I queried for a little bit with my first book, and I had a dream agent request a full, and then it was still a no.
Mhm.
And at that point, I had a friend that had an agent for over
Mhm.
2 years and still wasn't published. So
Mhm.
like kind of daunting to think, well, even once I get one, how long is it going to take to actually still get published with a publisher? And
Mhm.
I was too impatient for the process. And I was like,
Mhm.
you know what? I can just do this on my own. So I hired an editor and I hired a cover artist to do those parts for me. And then you do end up having to do a lot for yourself still within that journey. But there are things that it's like when you're formatting, when you I mean Amazon is actually pretty user friendly when it comes to
Mhm.
self-publishing, but there are some things like with formatting that you're like, I have no idea how to do this. And then my cover artist was just like, I got you, and like would edit it based on what it needed to be for the size and the paper and all the things on there. And then um it just having friends in the community that are also self-publishing is super
Mhm.
helpful, and just building that network is super
Mhm.
important. And marketing, I don't honestly do a ton of like advertising or
Mhm.
anything like that. It's kind of ridiculous, but I just don't have to, I don't have the time or the
Mhm.
resources to do a lot of that. So I really rely on my platform on
Mhm.
Twitter for book sales, and kind of the idea that if people like you, they will buy what you're selling, kind of thing.
Mhm.
Like if people
Mhm.
like what I have to say, they're gonna want to read my book or
Mhm.
book.
Mhm.
Um, I guess is just kind of my thought process behind that. And then the other part of that, it does put, you do have to put a lot of effort in to build
Mhm.
a platform like mine.
Mhm.
It it takes a lot of energy, and you do unfortunately get met with a lot of negativity and hate there,
Mhm.
but you have to look at it from a different perspective, because there's times where I've been really down about things people have said or done. um and even I mean, I've had people just create accounts for the explicit purpose to attack me and say bad things about me. I've had some pretty serious harassment,
Mhm.
and even people creating accounts to leave negative reviews on my book.
Mhm.
And I could tell, and I had a, and it was all kind of happening at the same time recently, or a couple of months ago, and I knew who it was, and
Mhm.
I found a way to confront that person, and then it stopped, because it's
Wow.
so easy to
Mhm.
hide behind a screen and think you're anonymous and do horrible things like that. But once that person calls you out on it, you're like, oh shit.
Mhm.
Like, no, what are they gonna do? What are they gonna do to me? And I didn't do anything, but
Mhm.
continued. I may have tweeted who it was out to
Mhm.
all my people, like, hey, this is what's happening, because I was to that point where I was about to go insane. Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, but you have to think about it from the perspective, like, imagine how miserable someone is to do that to another person.
Mhm.
Imagine how sad and awful their life must be to to create accounts just to be mean to somebody,
Mhm.
especially when you know you didn't do anything to that person.
Yeah, I just read the book The Gift of Fear, and they go over like a bunch of different different ways to assess like what is fear, what is like unwarranted worry and things like that. And it talks about like a lot about like stalking and about things like that, like whether it's like with celebrities or people in the public eye. And I found it so interesting. And I think it's like such a great way to protect yourself. They also go into like things about like domestic violence and like when like restraining orders and things like that. And it was very interesting. And the guy is really like an expert in it. So it was really enlightening. But I'm curious, what do you do specifically that helps you like protect yourself and like get out of that space like when you do kind of like feel like the hate is really overwhelming? Like what's your like go-to kind of like coping mechanism or self-care tactic?
Well, every time, like anytime one of my tweets gets traction of more than like 1,000 likes, that's when those kinds of negative comments start to come out of the woodwork. And I just like hide the replies and block the accounts immediately if I catch them. But sometimes they blow up so much I can't even keep track. But then it's just like whatever, you know what I mean? Because I can't pay attention to this. But really, like, it's just treating it like that. Like that's what it is. They're trying to get a reaction out of you, and if they get one, they win. So I just kind of grind myself down and pay attention to my reality. Like, okay, I have a family that loves me and knows me, and that is what's number one and most important. And just take a break. Just take a break
Yeah,
from
that is so profound. Something I'm curious, what do you do for you? Because I'm sure having a platform like that, there's a lot you do for your audience. And I'm just curious, like, what do you do for you to fill your cup so that you're giving from that overflow? You
no.
mentioned taking a break.
Well, like writing is for me that fills my cup. That's why I'm here and why I'm doing this and what it's all for is that passion that I have to get those words on the page. And yes, I write fiction, but there's so much that I put into that fiction and so much like writing for me is like so I don't know if you're a writer.
Yeah,
Are you a
yeah.
writer? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So when you get into that flow state where the words just come through you on the page and you conscious thought stop and that magic moment, like that's what I live for. And I feel like I have important messages to get across, and that's the point. Like it's like building a platform and selling books and all of that, it's sure, but that's not the important part. The important part is just getting those words on the page and getting them out there for whoever might need it to make some kind of a difference, I guess.
Yeah, that's so moving. And I think so many people can relate to that, especially like in the writing community, because I think sometimes I ask people like, what is their self-care activity? And so many of the writers say writing. And it could be complicated sometimes because I think like when you write and you sell it, like sometimes a little bit of that can be like compromised, this idea that like, people are going to read it. But I think at the end of the day, most writers just write because they love writing and that they're moved to do it. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.